In my last how-to video, which was how to tap into success or others' success, learn from the last generation, I want to follow on with this video to a sub-idea of the same idea, which is how to tap into the power of a mentor. And I want to use an example at the beginning to explain what I'm talking about. The first thing is you need to work out, and it might take you some time to work out what you really want to do. It took me until I was 55 to actually work out what I was good at and what I wanted to do, which was besides a job just to bring in money and keep house and family together. So let's say a person, I'm just using this as an analogy, a person decided they wanted to train horses, go to the races, race their horses and win horse races. First thing they do in the wrong way to do it, where they choose not to use a mentor, but just do it on their own, and this is a common mistake when a person doesn't understand the principle of mentoring, is they go and buy a nag at the yearling sales. It's the wrong horse. They go and buy a patch of ground to feed it. It's the wrong piece of dirt and the wrong kind of grass. They grade a training track, which might be the wrong surface tension for the horses. They do all the things that they need to do wrong because they will not take counsel from somebody who's already successful at training horses and winning races. So the alternative, I suggest for a person, if that was their passion, if that was what they felt their gift was, they had just a love with horses, and just that would, you know, if they came to the conclusion, if I could do that, that would be the perfect life. Well, I put it to you that their first step, their first success step, is not to buy a piece of dirt, not to buy a horse, not to grade a training track. Their first job is to actually find somebody who's successful at training and winning races, and ask them, would they teach them all they know about the business? By doing that, they sift the wisdom of the last generation and don't have to make a lot of mistakes. So I wonder if you like my example. I'm going to go to a couple of examples which I've used myself at the end of this video. So you need to link your passion with your gift, and then find somebody who's doing what you're doing. And when you do that, you'll find out that work for somebody else which is not in your passion is hard and draining. But work that's in your passion, being mentored by a mentor, flows, and it's almost empowering. It's like you can do 16 hours at your passion and still have energy, whereas 8 hours for a boss and you're completely wiped out. It's a strange thing. I do think that it takes time to find it. It may be by a trial and error, or it just takes a lot of going through what you've got to go through to find it, going through natural maturity. There's a lot of maturing between being a kid and becoming an adult, and there's a lot of maturing between being an adult. They say life begins at 40. Well, I can tell you there's a lot of growing that you do between 40 and 50, and now I'm 60, coming 62 in a few days' time. There's a growing, you're constantly growing. There's no stopping in the maturing process. And you may not be able to find it at 20, and you may not be able to find it even at 40. But if you keep searching, that square peg in a square hole destiny, if I could put it that way, that you're capable of rising to the top of and becoming successful, is in you. Now, like I say, I didn't find what was my gifting until I was 55, because I was blinkered thinking I cannot write because I'm dyslexic. What I needed to learn was, what I needed to do was find a mentor that would encourage me to say, well, if you had a co-writer, your storytelling is your gift, just stick to your gift and then partner up with a co-writer to clean up your manuscripts so that they become well written and to a publishable standard. So George Muller, I don't need to explain who George Muller was, but George Muller 150 years ago didn't actually start speaking to large crowds of people until he was 70 years old. But he died at 93. But between 70 and when he passed on, he had a huge influence as a public speaker. But it took him till he's 70 to find out. He did very, very good things prior to that, but to express his spoken gift didn't happen to him until he was 70 years old. So don't give up if you haven't got there yet. I'm so glad at 55 I started writing. I was so glad to find some keys through mentoring, and I was very glad to be encouraged by some people, in particular Dr. Cesar Aquino at Simlon University in the Philippines. Without their mentoring, I don't think I would have succeeded. In fact, I'm sure I wouldn't have. But I want to give you a couple of examples of where I used, where I couldn't find a mentor one-on-one, but I used books and reading of books, the sifting of many people writing to the same subject to try and find the common denominators that they would write about. So I had this passion and desire to go offshore sailing. And understanding this principle, I decided I would read everything I could lay my hands on about offshore sailing to learn the mistakes from reading what others' experiences. And I would read about, I'd read this book and it goes through all about the sunsets and the dolphins, and I'm sick of reading this over and over, because I read about 50 books on offshore sailing, and so much was the same. But every now and again, a common denominator would come through. Somebody would say, we had a plough anchor out and we started dragging as the wind came up, and we threw a much smaller Bruce anchor out and the boat stopped. And then 4 or 5 books later, you get the same thing. And then 4 or 5 books later, you get the same thing. And then you come to the conclusion, there must be something about Bruce anchors that are better than plough anchors. Then I went to actually speak to a guy that had a huge big fishing boat, and he was fishing in one of the most difficult parts of water in the world to fish in, which is Bass Strait, between Tasmania and the mainland, just at the bottom of Australia, but just south of Melbourne. And it's a notorious piece of water because the wind blows one way, the swell comes the other way, and it's only 50 fathoms deep, and it goes like a washing machine. And these guys used to anchor in 50 fathoms of water, a big steel fishing trawler, and they used a 120-pound Bruce anchor. They said they'd never once had it pull out. So when I went sailing on my 50-footer 26-ton steel motor sailor, I bought a 120-pound Bruce anchor, and never once in 8 years of sailing did it pull out. So that's an example of what I'm talking about, learning from the mentoring of others from reading of others. Leaders are readers. That's one of the reasons leaders become leaders, because they're prepared to sift the wisdom of the last generation from reading. When it came time to buying this boat, I used the same principle. The best person to buy a boat is not a person that's never bought a boat. The best person to buy a boat is a person that deals in buying and selling of boats all the time. So I engaged the services of a yacht broker to advise me what to buy and to actually do the negotiation for buying the boat on my behalf. And I saved myself a fortune. He said, no, not this boat, not that boat. I got excited about this boat. No, the boat's so good. He says your wife would hate that boat within 5 minutes. You'd be bounced around like eggs inside a basket on the front of a bouncy bike. You'd be all shook up in that kind of boat. You need this kind of boat for the reason, this ability, yeah. So we go off looking for another boat, and we did this over a process of 6 months, and eventually we got a short list of boats, and he was engaged at about $60 an hour to go around and look at my boats. And then he came across the last boat, and he was very deadpan about it, and I couldn't work out whether he was excited or not. He said, so what price have you negotiated on this boat so far? And because it was an unfinished boat, it needed some work to finish it. And his comment was, you could circumnavigate the whole of Australia and you'd never find that amount of boat for that smaller money, yet it still needs $40,000 spent on it. And that became the boat that we did 52,000 miles sailing in, and we were 3 days, 3 nights on the edge of a cyclone in 9-metre conditions. And I'm so glad that I took mentoring from that particular guy. Now, if you'd like to read about me also taking mentoring on what kind of plane to buy from a person who spent 4 years behind an O320 engine for no engine failure, that was one of the reasons I chose to buy an RV4. We flew it right around Australia, 46.5 hours flying time. We sailed with another guy right around Tasmania with a whole group of boats in conjunction with the Royal Hobart Yacht Club. And then we sailed our own boat across the Tasman, which is an infamous piece of water, to New Zealand and circumnavigated the South Island of New Zealand. The book is called 3 Circumnavigations. It's the only autobiographical book in my shelf of books. Go to gradedreading.com, graded reading all one word, and check it out. Please check out Dream Bouncing and the audio samplers, because it's the most recent book, which has been beautifully co-written by my co-writer Jenny Sweeney in England. So for this video, cheers from Graded Reading, and my name's Ronald Sharp. Cheers.